What happens when the most chilling mysteries remain unsolved? In Texas, there are stories of lives lost and questions left unanswered for years. Today, we delve into 5 haunting cases, each one still unsolved, with killers still free. These are not just unsolved crimes. They are stories of grief, fear, and unanswered questions. Let's uncover the mysteries that still haunt Texas. Case 1. The disappearance of Brandon Lawson, 2013, San Angelo, Texas. Brandon Lawson was a 26-year-old oil field worker from San Angelo, Texas. He had a history of substance abuse, but had reportedly been clean for about 6 months prior to his disappearance. He lived with his girlfriend, Ladessa Lofton, and their 4 children. The evening of August 8, 2013, began with an argument between Brandon and Ladessa. While the details of the argument are unclear, it's believed that it was related to Brandon's past struggles with drug use. After the altercation, Brandon decided to leave their home and set out on a drive to Crowley, Texas, to visit his father. At approximately 12:30 a.m. on August 9, 2013, Brandon called his brother, Kyle Lawson, informing him that he had run out of gas on U.S. Highway 277 near Bronte, Texas. During this call, Brandon mentioned, "3 expletives are chasing me out of town," later clarifying it was the Mexicans in the neighborhood. Kyle asked if Brandon was hallucinating, but Brandon denied it. The 911 call and the search. Brandon called 911 at approximately 12:50 a.m. His voice on the call was distressed and difficult to understand, with several parts of the conversation affected by poor reception. During the call, Brandon mentioned that he was being chased by someone, but didn't provide clear details about who or why. He also claimed to be bleeding, but didn't elaborate.
2013, 0:50 and 38 seconds.
No emergency.
Yes, I'm in the middle of the field. It's like we're just cruising guys over. Right here going towards Gasoline on both sides. Not sure if I ran out of gas. There's one part here. You got to take it to the woods. 3:30.
Okay, now run that by me.
We're not talking to him. I actually ran into him.
Ah, you ran into him. Okay.
That's the first guy.
Do you need an ambulance?
Yeah, no, I need the cops.
Okay. Is anybody hurt? Hello? Hello? Hello?
After the call, Kyle Lawson, Brandon's brother, drove to the location. When Kyle arrived, he found Brandon's truck parked on the side of the highway. The truck contained Brandon's phone, wallet, and keys. However, there was no sign of Brandon. Kyle immediately called 911 and a search began. Despite efforts from the police, volunteers, and search teams, Brandon was never found at the scene. The search efforts spanned miles of rugged terrain, but there were no clues that could explain where Brandon had gone. Facebook page and raising awareness. As the case began to gain more attention, Ladessa Lofton, Brandon's girlfriend, took matters into her own hands by opening a Facebook page dedicated to raising awareness about his disappearance. The Facebook page, titled "Help Find Brandon Lawson," was a crucial tool in garnering attention for the case. It not only provided updates and information, but also served as a platform for people to share tips or insights that could aid the search. Over time, the page gathered thousands of followers, many of whom started sharing their own theories about what had happened to Brandon. Through this social media presence, the case gained traction and drew attention from online sleuths. Some speculated that Brandon's 911 call, where he said he was being chased, was indicative of a drug deal gone wrong, while others wondered if he had been caught in a cartel-related conflict, or if he had been hallucinating due to the stress of his drug recovery. The public's intense interest also pressured local law enforcement to continue investigating and not let the case grow cold. The legal aspects. Brandon's case took a legal turn when it was discovered that just days before his disappearance, He had been charged with public intoxication. This charge, combined with his past struggles with substance abuse, led to speculation that he may have been under the influence or in a vulnerable state when he went missing. Some believe that the charges could have influenced Brandon's decision to leave in the middle of the night, fearing the consequences if he were to be found by police. However, despite these concerns, law enforcement could find no concrete evidence to suggest that drugs or alcohol played a direct role in his disappearance. Case 2. The Yogurt Shop Murders, 1991, Austin, Texas. On December 6, 1991, the I Can't Believe It's Yogurt Shop in North Cross Mall, Austin, Texas, was a popular stop for people in the area, including many teens working late-night shifts. The store was staffed that night by Amy Ayers, Eliza Thomas, and the Harbison sisters, Jennifer and Sarah, all teenagers just trying to earn a little extra money. The evening was typical, until things took a violent and unexpected turn. Key events leading up to the murders. Approximately 1 hour before closing time, a man who had been causing trouble earlier in the evening was allowed to use the bathroom in the back of the store. According to reports, he had hustled customers in line, possibly trying to scam people, but was permitted to use the back restroom as it seemed like a reasonable request. However, the man took an unusually long time in the bathroom, sparking suspicion. Some believe that he may have used the opportunity to jam the rear door open, allowing access to the store from the back at a later time, possibly allowing an accomplice to enter. This part of the timeline is speculative, but it's considered a crucial lead. As the clock inched toward closing time, a couple who left the shop just before 11 p.m. reported seeing two men at a table acting furtively. Their behavior seemed odd and suspicious, but they thought little of it at the time. Jennifer, the last person to lock the door before they closed up, had no way of knowing how close they were to the horrific events that would follow. If you've made it this far into the story, it means you care about uncovering the truth behind cases like this. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on the bell so you never miss our next deep dive. And let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'd love to see how far this community reaches. The murders. What happened inside the store? The man and possibly an accomplice waited for the store to empty. Then they made their move. Around 11:30 p.m., the killer, armed with a .22 caliber handgun, entered the store. The choice of weapon was significant because the .22 caliber is a relatively small and quiet bullet. However, there's no clear evidence that a suppressor was used. The victims were immediately confronted and ordered to the back of the store. The killer and his accomplice forced the girls to lie face down and then bound their hands and feet. Amy Ayers, 15, was the youngest of the victims and was found behind the counter in a secluded spot where she was strangled. Jennifer Harbison and Sarah Harbison, the sisters, were both shot in the head, the most immediate and brutal of the murders. Eliza Thomas, 17, was shot in the head as well, with the bullet entering from the side. The execution-style shooting was deliberate and brutal. Each victim was shot in the head, and the method of execution showed that the killer was intentional and cold-hearted in his actions. The shots were likely meant to instantly kill, though the bodies were found in various positions due to the chaotic nature of the crime. It was also noted that after the girls were held at gunpoint, the man tied their hands and feet and sexually assaulted them. The fire, a desperate attempt to destroy evidence. After the murders, the killer set the store on fire, likely to destroy any remaining evidence. The arson was clearly an attempt to cover up the crime, a final desperate act to erase any clues left behind. The fire caused extensive damage, especially to the interior of the shop, making it difficult for investigators to analyze the crime scene. Despite the fire's intensity, some evidence remained. DNA samples, including blood, were recovered from the scene, though these were later subjected to DNA testing in the 2000s to uncover more details about the killer. The fire was intense enough to destroy key evidence, but some clues were still found in the ruins of the yogurt shop. The gun used in the murders. The .22 caliber handgun used in the murders was significant because of its small size and low recoil, allowing the killer to use it easily in close-range, execution-style shootings. While this specific gun was never fully recovered, its caliber and the precise wounds it inflicted pointed directly to its involvement in the murders. The weapon was likely fired at close range, with the killer ensuring each shot was lethal. The .22 caliber bullet often leaves a smaller wound channel than larger rounds, but it is still highly lethal when fired at the head, as it can cause brain damage or instant death. The fact that the victims were shot in the head suggests the killer was intent on ensuring their deaths were quick and precise, a characteristic of someone with a specific intent to kill without hesitation. The investigation and breakthroughs. The yogurt shop murders immediately shook Austin and garnered national attention. Local investigators worked tirelessly, conducting interviews and searching for witnesses, but the case quickly became a cold case, with no leads emerging. Over the years, suspects were questioned, and several false confessions emerged.
No, just I killed somebody.
In 1999, the DNA from the crime scene was re-examined, and two suspects, Robert Springsteen and Michael Scott, came under suspicion. Both men had been involved in crimes around the same time and had prior connections to the area. Robert Springsteen initially confessed to the murders but later retracted his confession, claiming it was coerced during an intense police interrogation. Springsteen's case became a polarizing issue, with many questioning the validity of his confession. In 2001, Springsteen was convicted of the yogurt shop murders, but his conviction was overturned in 2009 after new DNA evidence exonerated him. The new evidence revealed that the DNA found at the crime scene didn't match Springsteen's. The case took another dramatic turn when Michael Scott, a convicted serial rapist, was identified as a potential suspect after DNA evidence linked him to the case. However, like Springsteen, Scott was never directly charged for the murders. His connection to the case, though compelling, remained inconclusive. The ongoing search for justice. For years, the families of the victims, Amy Ayers, Eliza Thomas, Jennifer Harbison, and Sarah Harbison, fought tirelessly for justice. Every new lead, every new suspect, reignited their hope for answers. But as each year passed, the search for justice became more difficult. The families held annual vigils, with candlelight ceremonies marking the anniversary of the murders. They continued to speak out in the media, reminding the city and the world that their loved ones' murders were still unsolved. 4 lives stolen, countless leads followed, yet still no justice. Today, the yogurt shop murders case remains unsolved, with a deep emotional toll on the families of the victims. DNA evidence has been examined, false confessions have been made, and suspects have been investigated, but the true killer or killers remain unknown. With the case still open, there are more questions than answers. How did the killer enter the store that night? How was the arson set so quickly after the murders? Why did the killer leave such few traces behind? And most hauntingly, who took 4 young lives in such a brutal way and still walks free today? The case remains a dark chapter in Austin's history, and its shadow continues to loom over the city. 4 lives were stolen, and justice has yet to be served. Will the families ever get the closure they deserve? Or will this mystery remain buried in the ashes of a fire that almost erased the truth? Case 3. The disappearance of Amber Hagerman, 1996, Arlington, Texas. On January 13, 1996, Amber Renee Hagerman, a 9-year-old girl, went on a typical afternoon bike ride near her grandmother's house in Arlington, Texas. Amber, full of life and curiosity, loved to ride her bike around the neighborhood. It was a warm Saturday afternoon, and she had recently moved with her mother, Donna Hagerman, and brother Ricky to Arlington, Texas, to escape an unstable living situation. Amber was described as a bright and joyful child who enjoyed spending time with her family, playing with her brother, and riding around the neighborhood. Her life was just beginning, filled with the promise of youthful adventure. That Saturday, Amber decided to take her bicycle out and ride around the block, a common practice for the young girl. But that was the last time anyone would see Amber alive. As she was riding her bicycle in a parking lot of a nearby abandoned grocery store, a man driving a dark-colored truck pulled up beside her. Without warning, he jumped out of his vehicle, grabbed Amber, and forced her into his truck. The abduction occurred in broad daylight, with several witnesses in the area, but none were able to intervene in time. One witness, a man who was near the scene, witnessed the abduction and immediately called the police.
I had seen that little girl over there playing up and down there, and he run up behind her and grabbed her. He turned around and come right back to here where his truck was, where the door was open, and put her in the truck.
However, by the time law enforcement arrived, the truck was long gone, and Amber Hagerman had disappeared without a trace. Witness statements, the only clue. Witnesses reported seeing Amber being grabbed by the man and forced into his truck. One witness, Jason McLean, a young man who lived in the area, saw the entire abduction unfold. He later described the man as being of average build and having dark hair. He was wearing dark clothing. McLean attempted to intervene, but the man quickly sped off, disappearing into the streets of Arlington. This witness's account became the only piece of concrete evidence that investigators had in the early stages of the case. As the hours passed, the search for Amber intensified. Amber's family immediately contacted the police, but the uncertainty of her fate was too much to bear. The neighborhood was filled with anxiety and fear as the whole community came together in an attempt to find the little girl. In the days that followed, hundreds of volunteers joined in the search efforts, scouring nearby fields, parks, and streets, hoping for any sign of Amber. The case garnered national attention.
We have late developments into the Channel 8 newsroom, and it is a rather ominous development in the case of 9-year-old Amber Hagerman.
Amber's photo was distributed across news channels, and people all over the country began to follow the investigation closely. The horror of a child being abducted in broad daylight hit a nerve with many, especially parents, who began to fear for the safety of their own children. The search for Amber continued for days, but the case soon turned from hope to despair. On January 17, 1996, 4 days after her abduction, Amber's body was discovered by a group of children playing near a creek in Riverside Park, located just a few miles from the site of her kidnapping. She had been dumped in a creek bed, and her body showed clear signs of brutal violence. Amber had been murdered. The community was devastated. The hope that Amber was simply lost and would be found safe had evaporated, replaced with the heartbreaking reality that Amber had been murdered. The investigation immediately shifted into high gear. Police were now focused on determining the cause of death, but because of the advanced decomposition, the specifics of the cause were unclear. Amber's body had been discarded like trash, and investigators were left to piece together what little evidence they had. The fact that Amber had been alive for several days after her abduction, enduring who knows what kind of torment, haunted the entire investigation. The investigation was extensive, but it quickly became clear that Amber's killer had left little behind. Several theories began to emerge, each attempting to piece together the events of that horrific day. Many believed the abduction and subsequent murder were the work of a local predator. The nature of the crime, the abduction of a child in broad daylight, suggested that the killer was familiar with the area and had been watching Amber before making his move. The theory gained traction, especially when no direct suspect could be identified in the early stages of the investigation. In an attempt to gain more attention for the case, police and the community began to focus on developing a criminal profile of the suspect. Was Amber's killer someone who had done this before? Was he a member of the community or an outsider who had come to the area specifically to target her? Despite federal involvement, including the FBI, and extensive efforts to reconstruct the timeline of the day, Amber's abductor was never found. The Amber Alert System, a legacy of hope. Though Amber Hagerman was tragically taken from this world, her memory would live on in an entirely new way. Her case would be the inspiration for the Amber Alert System, a nationwide initiative designed to quickly disseminate information about abducted children and enlist the help of the public in recovering them. The Amber Alert System was launched in 1996, just months after Amber's murder, and it has since helped save the lives of hundreds of children. The system relies on broadcast media, road signs, and text messages to alert the public immediately after an abduction. It was named after Amber Hagerman in honor of her life and legacy, transforming her tragic death into a tool of prevention and hope for other families. Since its creation, the AMBER alert system has expanded across the United States and has been credited with recovering countless missing children. This legacy has been a beacon of light in the darkness of Amber's murder, showing that while her life was taken too soon, her name would live on in the fight against child abductions. The emotional toll of Amber Hagerman's death on her family and community is immeasurable. For Donna Hagerman, Amber's mother, the pain of losing her daughter in such a brutal and public way was nearly unbearable. Donna spent years fighting for justice, speaking out about the case and ensuring Amber's story would never be forgotten. The community of Arlington also carried the weight of Amber's loss. For parents, the idea that a child could be abducted in broad daylight by a stranger was something they had never imagined. The fear of losing a child in such a public and terrifying way shaped the city's mindset and forced many to take extra precautions when it came to their own children. Amber's case was also deeply personal for law enforcement. Investigators became emotionally involved, feeling the weight of the case and the heartbreak of failing to catch the killer. For many, the lack of closure was a painful reminder of their inability to solve the crime. Though the case remains unsolved, Amber's legacy continues to inspire efforts to protect other children. The Amber Alert System, named in her honor, has helped rescue children from similar fates and remains one of the most important tools in combating child abduction in the United States. Law enforcement continues to pursue leads, but the pain of not knowing who took Amber and why still haunts her family and the community of Arlington. The case stays open, and Amber's legacy lives on, a reminder that justice is still sought, even if the answers remain hidden. The city may never forget her face, but the question remains, who took Amber Hagerman and why? Case 4. The murder of Terry Missy Bevers, 2016 Midlothian, Texas. Terry Missy Bevers was born on August 9, 1970, in Graham, Texas, a small town in the northern part of the state. Growing up in a close-knit community, Missy was known for her vibrant personality, love for fitness, and passion for helping others. She was a dedicated mother and wife, with a natural ability to inspire those around her. In 1998, Missy married Brandon Bevers, and together they built a family, having 3 daughters. The family eventually settled in Red Oak, Texas, a suburban community just south of Dallas, where Missy focused on raising her children while also pursuing her career as a fitness instructor. Her fitness classes, particularly Camp Gladiator boot camps, were incredibly popular. Missy's dynamic, enthusiastic approach to fitness made her a well-loved instructor at Creekside Church of Christ in Midlothian, Texas, where she held her classes. Missy's life seemed full of promise, balancing work and family. She was described as compassionate, with a strong sense of community, and she worked tirelessly to motivate and improve the lives of those around her. Her students adored her, and her children meant everything to her. On April 18, 2016, the city of Midlothian was struck by a violent thunderstorm, which set the stage for the tragic events of that day. Missy was scheduled to hold a Camp Gladiator fitness class at Creekside Church of Christ, but due to the poor weather conditions, she informed her students the night before that the class would take place inside the church rather than outside in the usual parking lot. On that fateful morning, Missy arrived at the church around 4:18 a.m. to set up for the class, which was scheduled to start at 5 a.m. As the rain poured down and the storm raged outside, Missy quietly prepared for her class, unaware that this would be the last time anyone would see her alive. Unreleased surveillance footage from the church shows Missy entering the building alone at 4:18 a.m., setting up for the class. Nothing unusual is seen at this point. She appeared calm and focused, likely eager to start the day, as she had done hundreds of times before. The church was empty at the time, and there were no signs of any disturbance when Missy first arrived. However, the calm atmosphere would soon turn to horror. At approximately 5 a.m., one of Missy's students arrived for the class, only to stumble upon an unthinkable sight. The student discovered Missy's lifeless body in the church, near the entrance, before the fitness class began. The body was found inside the church building, in an area where Missy had been preparing earlier. The scene was gruesome. Missy had been brutally beaten, struck multiple times. Evidence from the crime scene suggested that the attack was violent and targeted. At the time of the discovery, the student immediately called emergency services, and police were dispatched to the scene. As law enforcement arrived, it was confirmed that Missy Bevers had died, and the investigation into her murder began immediately. She was pronounced dead shortly after the police arrived, but the exact cause of her death would take time to determine. The crime scene was secured, and investigators began the painstaking task of uncovering what happened in the hours before her death. Midlothian police quickly took control of the case, conducting an initial investigation into Missy's death. The church's security cameras proved to be a vital piece of evidence, as they captured key moments in the early morning hours. The surveillance footage showed a figure dressed in police tactical gear, wearing a helmet, a vest, and gloves, entering the church at around 4:20 a.m., just a few minutes after Missy entered. The figure's movements were calm, even purposeful, suggesting that the person was familiar with the church's layout. The suspicious figure walked through the hallways of the church, and it was clear they had an objective, whether it was to commit the crime or to observe. The footage became a crucial part of the investigation. However, the identity of the suspect remained unclear, as the person's face was hidden by the helmet and tactical gear. Despite the clear footage, the figure's identity was not immediately revealed, leaving law enforcement with more questions than answers. As the investigation unfolded, several theories emerged regarding Missy's murder. Given the tactical gear worn by the suspect, police were quick to theorize that the killer may have had some law enforcement background. However, no direct evidence linked the figure in the footage to any known police officers or criminal backgrounds. One theory suggested that the killer may have been a jealous rival, someone who had a personal vendetta against Missy. She had many admirers, both in her personal and professional life, and investigators wondered if someone had grown jealous of her success, her relationship with her family, or her popularity in the fitness community. Another possibility was that the killer was someone close to Missy, perhaps someone from her personal life who harbored resentment. This theory was considered because of the intimate nature of the crime, the knowledge of Missy's schedule, and the fact that the killer seemed to have entered the church with ease. A third theory was that Missy was the victim of a random attacker, someone who happened to be at the church that morning for reasons unknown, or who had planned the attack for other reasons. This theory was less likely, however, as the suspect was dressed in police-like tactical gear, which suggested prior planning. Despite these theories, no definitive suspect was identified in the days and weeks following Missy's murder. Investigators combed through the surveillance footage, conducted interviews with potential witnesses, and even questioned Missy's family and acquaintances. In 2016, Brandon Bevers, Missy's husband, was publicly questioned, but there was no evidence to suggest he was involved in her murder. He was cleared of suspicion, and investigators continued to focus on the suspicious figure in the footage. Missy Bevers' death left a massive void in the lives of her family, especially her 3 young daughters. Her husband, Brandon, and her daughters were devastated by her tragic and untimely death. Missy had been an integral part of their lives, and her murder was a blow to their sense of security and safety. For her daughters, who were growing up without their mother, the impact was immeasurable. They were forced to navigate life without the guidance, love, and care that their mother had provided. Missy's fitness community also mourned her loss deeply. She had been a beloved instructor, a positive force in the lives of many people who relied on her for motivation and support. Her Camp Gladiator classes had inspired countless individuals to lead healthier lives, and the fitness community in Midlothian was shaken by her sudden death. The murder of Missy Bevers remains one of the most haunting, unsolved cases in Midlothian, Texas. Despite surveillance footage that clearly shows the suspect in police tactical gear, the identity of the killer remains unknown. Investigators have worked tirelessly, but the case has remained open, with few leads emerging. For Missy's family, the heartbreak of not knowing who killed their beloved wife and mother continues to haunt them. The killer is still out there, and though Missy's fitness legacy continues to inspire, the search for justice remains ongoing. The question still remains, who murdered Missy Bevers? The killer was captured on tape, yet still free. Will justice ever be served? Case 5. The I-45 Texas Killing Fields, 1970s to 2000, Houston to Galveston area. The I-45 stretch of highway, running from Houston to Galveston, Texas, is known for more than just its important role as a transportation route. It is infamous as the location of over 30 women and girls who have gone missing and were later found murdered in the nearby fields and swamps. Over the years, this stretch of highway earned the ominous nickname, the Texas Killing Fields. The land between Houston and Galveston became synonymous with terror, murder, and unanswered questions. The I-45 highway spans approximately 60 miles, connecting the Houston area with the coastal city of Galveston. The stretch of road that passes through League City, Alvin, and Dickinson is lined with desolate fields, dense woods, and swampy marshes, which made it an ideal location for a killer to dispose of bodies without being easily detected. The area is sparsely populated, with only a few homes and businesses scattered along the way. As a result, the land became the perfect place for a killer to act with relative impunity. The victims of the Texas killing fields came from various walks of life. Many were young women, some were runaways, and others had troubled pasts or were simply in the wrong place at the wrong time. Their stories represent a range of backgrounds, and their murders left behind grieving families still searching for answers. Here are some of the notable victims linked to the Texas killing fields. Donna Prudhomme, 1976. Age at time of disappearance, 19. Details. Donna was last seen hitchhiking near League City, Texas, in 1976. Her body was found a year later in a ditch near Highway 45. She had been strangled and sexually assaulted, and her case is believed to be one of the first in the string of unsolved murders along the highway. Her death marked the beginning of the Texas killing fields. Wanda Lopez. Age at time of disappearance, 28. Details. Wanda was last seen in 1980, abducted from the League City area. Her body was found dumped along Interstate 45, showing signs of sexual assault and violence. Like Donna, her case raised suspicions of a serial killer operating in the area. Leigh Ockey. Age at time of disappearance, 20. Leigh went missing while walking home from work in 1986. Her body was discovered 2 months later near Galveston. She had been strangled, and her murder was one of the most brutal along I-45. Tiffany Sessions. Age at time of disappearance, 19. Tiffany disappeared after going for a jog near I-45. Her body has never been found, but her case remains one of the most well-known unsolved disappearances in the area. Her story has been heavily investigated over the years, but the mystery continues to haunt her family. Tamara Fisher, 1993. Age at time of disappearance, 14. Tamara was abducted from League City and found months later, her body dumped along I-45. The nature of her violent death linked her case to the others. Investigators have struggled to solve the case, though it has remained a key piece in the broader investigation. While the victims came from different backgrounds and had varying ages, a distinct pattern emerged. Most were young women, many of whom had been abducted, sexually assaulted, and killed, with their bodies dumped near I-45. The killer or killers clearly knew the area and had a repeated method of disposing of bodies in these remote fields. The investigation into the Texas killing fields murders began in the 1970s, when the first victims started to disappear along I-45. Over the decades, law enforcement investigated hundreds of leads, interviewed potential witnesses, and followed numerous theories, but they encountered many challenges along the way. At first, the cases seemed like isolated events, missing persons reports that were either left unresolved or thought to be unrelated. Law enforcement did not immediately recognize the pattern. The first known cases were those of Donna Prudhomme and Wanda Lopez, both women who were found dumped along the I-45 in the 1970s. Their deaths appeared to be random killings, and police did not initially make the connection between these two cases. However, when other young women went missing in similar circumstances over the years, it became clear that something more sinister was at play. Over time, several suspects came under suspicion, but no clear match was found. Some of the primary suspects included Henry Lee Lucas. Henry Lee Lucas was a serial killer who had been active during the 1970s and 1980s. He confessed to killing numerous people across the United States, and some of the Texas killing fields victims were among those he claimed to have killed. However, Lucas's confessions were later proven unreliable, and his DNA did not match that of the victims. Samuel Little. Samuel Little, another serial killer, was also investigated in connection with the Texas killing fields. Little was later convicted of 3 murders in California, and he became a suspect in the I-45 cases after DNA evidence linked him to several of the killings. However, Little was never charged for these specific crimes, and no concrete evidence connected him directly to the murders. Despite these suspects, the lack of physical evidence made it difficult to pin down a definitive killer. The grief for Donna Prudhomme's family, for example, has been compounded by the fact that her body was not discovered until a year later, after she went missing in 1976. They lived with the fear that she had been murdered but were unsure of how, why, or by whom. The community of Midlothian and the surrounding areas of Houston and Galveston remains haunted by the events of the Texas killing fields. The fear that a killer may still be out there, free to kill again, remains a constant anxiety. For parents, the thought that someone could abduct their daughter and dispose of her body so easily still keeps them on edge. The Texas killing fields remains one of the most infamous unsolved crime sprees in U.S. history. The most haunting question of all remains: how many killers walked free in Texas? And how many secrets are still buried in those fields? As we reflect on the chilling and heartbreaking cases we've covered today, it's clear that these 5 stories are not just part of the eerie history of Texas. They are reminders of the many unanswered questions and unresolved grief that families still live with every day. From the haunting Texas killing fields to the disappearance of Amber Hagerman and the brutal murder of Missy Bevers, these cases represent the pain and uncertainty of lives lost too soon, with the killers still roaming free. Behind every unsolved case is a family still waiting for answers. The mysteries may remain, but their pain is real, and their stories deserve to be told. It's not just about finding the truth. It's about bringing closure to families who have been living in the shadows of these unsolved crimes for decades. These victims were loved. They were daughters, mothers, sisters, and friends. Their stories deserve justice, and we must not forget them. Which of these mysteries shocked you the most? Was it the I-45 killings, where over 30 victims have been left to fade into the background? Or perhaps the disappearance of Amber Hagerman, whose name inspired a nationwide system to save lives, but still remains without closure? Do you believe that any of these cases can ever be solved? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and let's discuss. Your voice matters in keeping these stories alive. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories where the truth is still out there, waiting to be uncovered. Like this video if you think these cases deserve justice. Join us next time as we dig into more mysteries that need answers, because no matter how dark, the truth always finds a way to come to light.